First, let's talk to somebody who sides with Krugman, and that is George Magnus, the senior economic advisor at UBS, the man who predicted that the US subprime crisis would trigger a global recession. George, thanks for joining us today. Thanks. It does seem that all the austerity and budget cuts that are taking place across Europe are the kind of received wisdom at the moment. Are they all really wrong?
For some countries, it's clearly not. There's no choice. I mean, they've been rumbled. The creditors have basically said no confidence. And countries like Greece, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, and so on have had to embark on very, very painful austerity programs. But for the rest of us, I just don't see the urgency of, not that we shouldn't have plans to deal with the deficit, credible plans, but the urgency of pressing ahead with doing it altogether, because I think that's really going to threaten the fragile recovery that we've got. So
it's a timing issue, really?
I think it is basically a timing issue. I mean, there's a lot of ideology involved here, so you have to try to kind of distinguish what's political and what's actually economics. The economics of it is actually that the governments have big deficits because the private sector in the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, Japan, and many other countries, the private sector is just saving bucket loads of money. And I think if you basically want to cut the deficits altogether, then I think you're making an assumption that actually the private sector is suddenly going to come to life just like that and start spending like the crisis had never happened. And I think that's just completely unrealistic. So I think we can keep government borrowing, I think, is actually an essential offset to the withdrawal of private sector spending and lending.
What can happen, though? What can be done to get the private sector spending? You say that they've got buckets of money. I mean, that sounds like great, because no one seems to have any money at the moment. If they've got buckets of money, let's have some of it.
Well, you say that, but, you know, if you look at the S&P 500 companies, you look at the FTSE 100 companies, you look at the listed companies in any major advanced developed market, these companies are sitting on record amounts of cash on their balance sheet. Now, some companies do have programs for increasing their capital expenditure or investing money overseas, but actually, for the most part, this money is just stuck there. Companies don't have confidence. So I think what governments really need to do is, you know, you need to have a plan, obviously, to deal with the deficit over 5, 6, 7 years. But actually, where governments really have not really been very forwards, really, is in attacking the long-term liabilities, you know, the pensions, healthcare, retirement age issues. These are the things that governments really can create longer-term confidence in by actually attacking these now.
And the short-term austerity measures that, say, the UK is embarking on, that Germany has its budget today, do you think that what we're going to see there is really that they will push growth backwards? I do, actually. I think the risk, the backdrop, I think we have to kind of understand very clearly as well. The backdrop is a deleveraging banking system, structurally weak labour markets, and a production rebound that's now running out of steam. Okay, so none of these things would push us back into recession, but concerted fiscal drag of the type which we are now considering, you know, across the whole of Europe, and actually even the US states actually are doing their bit by law, incidentally. But that certainly could tip us over the edge, and I think it would be judicious for us to just kind of take our time and say, actually, there's no rush to do this. In this country, George Osborne could have got up in the House of Commons and said nothing for 3 hours, and the deficit would still have halved over 5 years. So, you know, it's distinguishing the politics. Well, we were told, were we not, in the run-up to the election, that if he didn't come out with this huge austerity plan, that the markets would punish the UK. Yeah,
I don't believe that. I didn't believe it beforehand, and I don't believe it now. I mean, look at, you know, gilt yields, US Treasury yields, you know, Bund yields. You know, this is not the expression of a financial marketplace that says there's a credibility problem.
And again, in the United States, where the budget deficit is not being slashed in the same way, there aren't these austerity plans. You don't think that that at some point the markets are going to look there and say that deficit is out of control? Well,
they might, and I think that's why the Obama administration actually, I think, is actually falling short of what is required by not convincing its creditors, which essentially, you know, are the Chinese and, you know, lots of other foreign central banks, not convincing them that actually that there is a game plan there which says that in 2013 or 2014 we're going to raise value-added tax, or we're going to, you know, have a plan to attack federal spending on this kind of basis. So there needs to be a clear program which indicates how the deficit will be managed. But at the same time, if you do that without sustaining economic growth, you're just going to end up like Greece or, in this kind of debt spiral, which I think would be very, very dangerous.
So it's too early, basically?
I think it's too early. You have to have the plan, but it's too early to implement it.
George, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.